Hey everyone, I'm here with just a quick overview of capitalization rules. I'm going to break these down into 4 categories. We capitalize the first words of sentences, quotes, and some other things. We capitalize names of titles, places, people's names, etc. We're going to capitalize dates and time periods, and finally the personal pronoun I. First up, we capitalize the first words of the following. Sentences. This one's a no-brainer. Capitalize the first word of each sentence. You're also going to capitalize dialogue and direct quotes. Ethan asked, "Are you coming to the party?" However, you are not going to capitalize quotes that continue later. "I am," he replied, "but I might be late." We'll capitalize greetings and goodbyes and letters. So things like "to whom it may concern." Notice that only "to" gets capitalized there. And "sincerely yours." We'll also capitalize after a colon, but only when what follows is a complete sentence, and honestly, this is quite rare. He only had 1 point to make at the meeting. The business was failing. Typically, you're going to see colons used like this. We needed several items from the grocery store: bread, milk, eggs, ham, and nail polish. And we will not capitalize the first word after the colon in that example. Next up, we have names, titles, places, etc. There are a lot of little kind of nitpicky rules that go with this. I'm going to cover an overview and just use your best judgment with this. If it's titled, it's going to be capitalized. So, for example, people's names. My best friend is Brett. We're also going to capitalize titles when they precede a name. So, for example, Principal Griffiths called me down to the office. However, we would not capitalize titles that appear after a name. Mr. Griffiths is the principal of our school. We will capitalize titles when they appear in a direct address, such as, "Excuse me, Professor, but I'm not understanding the lecture." And lastly, we'll capitalize initials, initialisms, and acronyms. So I had to ask Mrs. Miller for a favor since she worked for the BMV. This would also include initials if they appear in the middle of a name. So, Brett P. Phillips, the P in the middle would get capitalized. Of course, we'll also capitalize named works. This can be any sort of works of art, titles of books, etc., and so on. However, in these titles, we do not capitalize the articles a, an, and the, or the, nor do we capitalize short prepositions such as as, to, at, etc. I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So, like I said, these works will include all sorts of things, but you have to be careful. So something like PC Magazine, that's the title of the publication. So we're going to capitalize PC and magazine in this sentence. But Time Magazine is just called Time. So here we would say, I read that Time Magazine said he was the most influential man of the year. We'll also capitalize trademarks, really any trademark. So I want the latest Samsung Galaxy Note 9. Any sort of products, Apple, Pepsi, and so on. Continuing on in rule number 2, we're going to capitalize named places. So yes, we would capitalize the Grand Canyon. That's a named place. But we would not just capitalize canyon if we said we hiked in the canyon for a couple of days. Here's another example. The Boston Marathon is one of the biggest of the year. But just saying I have zero motivation to ever run a marathon, I would not capitalize marathon. We're going to capitalize cities, countries, nationalities, and languages. So here's a sentence that it has all of those. Many of the native Japanese in Japan only speak one language, except in Tokyo, where many speak English. We're not going to capitalize directions unless it's like the title of a place. So, no, in the sentence, we are heading south for the winter. But yes, in I love the arid climate of the Southwest. That's a named region, so it's going to get capitalized. Rule number 3 is that we capitalize dates and time periods. So we're always going to capitalize days of the week, months of the year, holidays. For example, I believe Christmas Day. We're going to capitalize day there just because it's the title of that holiday. Will fall on a Tuesday in December of 2020. We will not capitalize seasons except when it's used in a title. So I would not say I can't wait for spring. I'm not going to capitalize spring there. But I would capitalize spring in this sentence. I will be taking biology during spring 2019 semester because that's the title of that semester. We're also going to capitalize time periods and named events. So the Middle Ages were a challenging time for Europeans. That's a time period. Or the Great Depression preceded World War II. Great Depression and World War II are both named events. So they get capitalized. And lastly, I'm going to end with the simplest, most straightforward rule of capitalization. And I'm including this because I am surprised how many of my students do not capitalize the personal pronoun I. And I don't know if it's because our phones have autocorrect or whatever, but make sure that you're anytime an I is by itself, make sure you're capitalizing it. So my sister and I will be there. Thanks for watching. If you're one of my students, there are more resources in Schoology for you. And if you just happened upon this video in YouTube and you have a question, go ahead and comment below and I'll make sure to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks.